Hey everybody, I wanted to kind of show you something with one of our snakes, Nala here. She is a chainsaw ball python, cinnamon, Mojave, and pinstripe together. This is the most defensive snake that we have currently. She just does not really trust people. You can see right now she's in a very defensive posture. She's in the S position, and she's really keeping her eye on me and keeping her eye on this camera. I've done a video with her before, and with her it's kind of fluctuated. We've worked with her and it seems sometimes like it gets better, and then she'll kind of go back to being a little bit scared and defensive. We did move her over here to the rack recently. She was in the 40-gallon that we now have Pumpkin in, so it could very well have to do with her getting used to her new home or her new enclosure. But it's not ever hard for me to get her out. She's just real, skittish, and so she'll hiss sometimes, and she'll be in this posture a lot. Now, it's not that she wants to hurt me or anybody. It's just that from the time she was a baby, she came from a facility, a big breeding facility, and we got her when she was already a year old. So she was not a baby ball python that was handled often and worked with, when it comes to people trying to hand tame her or anything like that. So that's a lot of the times what can happen if you get a baby ball python, or any snake for that matter, and you don't work with it, and it's not used to you or anybody for that matter. You can run the risk of them being defensive. She's struck plenty of times. She's never bitten anybody. We wouldn't let anybody hold her until maybe one day she seems to get a little bit more comfortable. As you can see right now, she's starting to kind of move around a little bit because I've been being really still. And so she's starting to kind of loosen up a little bit. But this is not a snake that we would let anybody hold except for us. Especially right now, just because of her behavior, because we're the two people that take care of her, and we're the only people that she knows at all. And even though she knows us, she still has this sort of demeanor about her. And, this is why I feel like it's important to note that, your animals, they're going to recognize the amount of time that you spend with them. If you don't spend enough time with them, it can be hard to break them of a lot of these different cycles and personality traits. And for her situation, she was already almost an adult pretty much before we got her, and wasn't worked with as far as handling. So, I'm going to show you right quick. She's still a little bit nervous. I'm going to show you as I move this camera. She starts breathing kind of heavier, and she starts looking around. One thing you can do with a snake that's defensive is you can, when you're holding them, make sure that you point their face away from you. And when you reach into the enclosure, never put your hand in their face. Reach from behind and get them out, behind their body, at the end of their body. Don't try to grab them from the front. That's a great way to get bitten if they are acting like this inside their enclosure and you try to stick your hand in their face. So when I grab her out of her enclosure, I get her from behind. I make sure that I don't put my hands directly in her face when I get her out. But as you can see, she's kind of smelling around right now. She's looking around, and she's getting to be a little bit more comfortable, and she's used to me more than anybody else because I've spent more time with her, and I'm the one that comes up here a lot more to just kind of check on her, and she just sees me more. So she's a little bit more used to me, and it doesn't take her very long to start being like this and kind of moving around. But this is just something I wanted to show you because not every snake is the same. I mean, for the many snakes we have that are hand tame and completely comfortable with people, she's not. And she may always have this sort of tendency. It could get better over time, but she could just sort of always end up having this nervous sort of tendency about her. And it's not anything necessarily bad. It's just she's different, you know. And so I know that because she's different, when I work with her, I try to pay, you know, extra attention and, you know, really, really try to be calm with her and let her know that it's okay and that I'm not going to hurt her and nobody's going to hurt her. And she, you know, she's not a bad snake, you know. And I hate when there's people that try to say, oh, that's a mean snake or that's a bad snake. No, it's just that she's defensive. This is her natural behavior. As soon as you put her back in, she knows she's back in her enclosure and she gets defensive again. So you see how she's doing right now? She's saying, you've put me back. This is my house. What are you still doing here? And watch this. She's gonna focus on this camera right here. She's gonna move her head and she's gonna be looking wherever I'm at. So I gently put her back in here. And so now that she's back in here, that defensive switch has been turned back on. And she does not want to be messed with. If I were to put my hand in front of her face right now, she would bite me. And like I said, it doesn't mean she's a bad snake or anything. It means that she's being defensive because she's scared and she doesn't trust what's going on. See? She's getting ready to come towards this camera. She may strike at the camera or she may just come see what the camera is. She's probably going to come up to it and then go back. Yeah, she's just coming up to the camera to see what it is, and she retreated. But yeah, I mean, you'll get to where when you work with these animals enough, see, now she's kind of going away because she's like, okay, I've checked it out, everything's fine, I'm going to go back in here and get in my hide. But you saw how for a minute there when she was coming up to the camera, you really weren't sure whether or not she was going to strike or not. And if you work with your animals enough, you'll get to where you can just about predict what they're going to do. And in that sense, I was basically able to more so predict what she was going to do. Now, she's coming back out on this side, so she knows that the camera is still filming her. She may come back around. I think she's probably going to. Because right now what she's doing is she's slowly moving. She's going back in her hide, but she's watching from around the corner. And she's back in that S position, I can tell from over here. So this is a snake that you wouldn't want to be just reaching in here and grabbing. I can reach in and grab a lot of my other ones, but I don't do that with her. Like, I really look at her and pay attention to what she's doing before I come in here and get her. And like I said, I grab her from behind. I don't ever put my hand in her face. But she's definitely defensive, especially when she's in her enclosure. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna just leave her be. I'm gonna push her tub back in since I've misted her tub anyway and given her some humidity and stuff for the night. And I'll give her a couple of days because we're going to feed them tomorrow. So she's going to eat tomorrow. And then, once or twice a week, try to handle them, especially if they're defensive. I would say twice a week at least if they're like this and they're a little bit defensive. And, they may change drastically over time with their personality. They may not, but it's no big deal. She's not a bad snake. She's just, it's almost like if you've ever adopted a dog from a shelter and that dog has had a traumatic experience with people, or it just doesn't trust people, or has never really been, she yawned just now. But if the dog has never really had a good experience with people, or just isn't sure about people, it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. So don't, be alarmed or freak out. And this happens. I know people that have adult ball pythons that their personality never changes, and they just, unfortunately, they don't ever come out of that defensive, sort of mode that they're always in, no matter how much you try to handle them. So we're hopeful with her that she'll eventually become a lot more hand tame, but from what I've seen, it's like 50-50. She's either going to stay like this, and it's just going to be when you go in to handle her or do anything in this enclosure, you're just going to have to be mindful and watchful of her and know how to read her body language. Or she might become, friendly, or she might become less defensive one day. But I'm going to go ahead and push her back in here. But I just wanted to show you a little bit of her and kind of how to approach this situation if you run into this situation yourself with your own ball python.